Okay, so welcome to chapter 2. We're going to talk about who commits fraud and why they commit it. And so one of the things that I want to do is I want to, I believe I have a PowerPoint that goes into different fraud theories, trying to explain why fraud exists. It started with white collar crime, and that's where a sociologist, criminologist went in and did research to determine why it was that white collar criminals basically got less punishment or even no punishment versus blue collar criminals. And so they came up with this theory that because these are people in prestigious positions, these are people who have a good reputation in the community. They probably have education, have lots of experience, probably do things in the community, that we are less likely, based on their reputation, work performance, to prosecute them for fraud. Then after that came the fraud triangle. Then they added on the fraud diamond, and then came mice, then came score. There's the fraud scale. So there's all kinds of different fraud theories out there. My favorite, of course, is the fraud triangle, then followed up with the fraud diamond, and they even have one more after that as well. I was doing some research recently and came across it, but I didn't mark it, so I can't tell you about it. But let's get going. Okay, so we should understand who commits fraud. Why? Understand the fraud triangle, how pressure contributes to fraud, understand why opportunities must be present in order for fraud to be committed. Okay, so you all remember they should have rationalization in here. We should be able to identify controls, identify non-control factors, understand why people rationalize. Okay, there we go. There's the rationalization. So the fraud triangle consists of pressure, rationalization, and opportunities. Those are the 3 points to the triangle. Now, the pressure and the rationalization are the only things, those are the two that the fraudster is in control of. The only thing you are in control of is the opportunity. If you eliminate the opportunity, you thus eliminate the potential for fraud. So that's why it's so important to have that control in place, proper internal controls, proper policies and procedures, and the attitude to combat fraud. The more you have those different pieces, the less likely that fraud is to commit in your organization. So here's a kiting example. Kiting is when you, and I'm going to tell you that kiting was a very prevalent method. I'm going to say back in the 90s, it was still being done. But when banking institutions made it so that your checks were clearing within a day to 2 days, the kiting kind of eliminated itself. So basically kiting is, so I have bank A and bank B. Okay, and so they're using bank A and bank B. Bank A is getting ready to overdraft because I've written too many checks on it, and maybe whatever my revenue that I thought I was getting in today didn't come in. So what I do is I write a check from bank B to cover the overdraft in bank A, and I deposit it, knowing it's going to take, back in the 90s, it would take about 4 or 5 days before that check would clear. And so I basically covered the overdraft, and so it didn't overdraft, and I didn't have to pay overdraft fees because theoretically I had enough money. But over here in bank B, I didn't have that money. Okay, I just wrote the check, let's say $2,000, to cover the $2,000 overdraft, even though I may have only had $100 in bank B. So then before that check clears bank B, I've got to write another check from bank A to cover that check. So it just kind of goes back and forth like that. So that's called kiting, and it's very illegal. And if you get caught, you get in trouble. But businesses they did it all the time. And I'm just going to tell you, I saw it all the time. It happened all the time. You're just you're floating one check to another check, and you're just hoping that they don't catch you, and it doesn't catch up with you. Even if you were intending to pay the bank back and get it all settled, it's still illegal because you didn't have the funds to cover it to begin with. Okay, so people eventually, especially when you're doing it on purpose to defraud somebody, you will get caught. It is a felony. It's check fraud. You're stealing. So what would make somebody do this in order, commit fraud in order to, get their checks covered? Well, it could be various reasons. It could be, like they say, financial pressure. It could be that maybe their timing's off, whatever the reason. Maybe they don't think it's a big deal. Anyone can commit fraud. That's why I tell everybody, you don't trust people. Not that they're not trustworthy, but you go in with the attitude that you can't trust people. So you create good internal control. You create good organizational culture that values ethics. You create policies and procedures that people follow so that you can eliminate the fraud. As soon as you get a laissez-faire type attitude, like who cares? Nobody's going to steal from us. That's when it happens, because you've just opened up the opportunity, because you're not following those values. So, psychological profiles of fraud perpetrators are more similar to those of college students than to those of other property criminals. So college students, so basically what they're saying is college students have a propensity to commit some type of plagiarism, which is a fraud. And I'm gonna, okay, so I'd like to see that study. And I'm not seeing it in the notes here in the slide, but theoretically, yeah, sure, it could happen. They have done studies that have found students or high profile executives who have defrauded the company have often been linked to cheating at the college level. So I can agree with that point. Now, there's also different theories that go out there and say that there's more sociopaths, psychopaths out there than we realize, and that those type of people, they excel in a market type organizational culture, which is focused on sales and do whatever you can do to earn that revenue. And those do whatever it is, do whatever it takes. Those type of attitudes, sociopaths, psychopaths, fare well. What's the difference between a sociopath and a psychopath? A psychopath has brain lesions. Brain lesions. They were there at birth, whereas a sociopath sometimes does not. They could have brain lesions, but a psychopath is born, a sociopath is made. Just FYI. So they both have some of the same behavior characteristics. And just because somebody may be diagnosed as a sociopath or a psychopath doesn't mean they are fraudsters or they're evil. It just means they have certain behaviors, and it's kind of like with autism. Just because somebody has autism doesn't mean they're bad. It's what happens after. You can always train a sociopath, a psychopath, to not commit crimes. I read this one, actually, it was a video I watched where this guy was asked, why don't you commit these crimes anymore? And he said, because I don't want to go to jail. There you go. You just train them not to commit the crime by having a punishment that they don't want to deal with. And so they don't commit crimes anymore. Okay, characteristics of fraud are similar to those that are attractive to most organizations, exactly what I just said. There's 4 main types of organizational culture. It's ad hoc, it is hierarchy, it is clan, and market. Market is your sales focus. Clan is your team. Hierarchy is your black and white group. You know, you got to have everything's got to be in control. And ad hoc is your arts. Okay. So most business associates and partners are capable of committing fraud. It is impossible to predict who is going to be dishonest. When fraud is revealed, victims are often in denial because they can't believe that it happened. They can't believe they fell for it. Here's the fraud triangle. So remember I told you about the 3 points. So we can see pressures up here, rationalization is here, and opportunity is here. Pressure and rationalization are something the fraudster deals with. The only thing you have control over is the opportunity. Eliminate the opportunity, eliminates the fraud. Okay. Here's the fraud. This is the fraud scale. So basically, if you look at, so this is situational pressures. If they're low, okay, it's nice and balanced. If it's, if it's higher, then it's going to tip over in this way. And the opportunities to commit. Okay, there you go. Opportunities. Again, if the opportunities are low, it's not going to tip the scale. If you have high personal integrity, it's going to, it's going to help you out there. Anyhow, so that's the fraud scale. Let's see if they got another one in there. No, they don't. Okay, I'm going to actually add one. So if you add another point in here and make it a diamond, it's capability. That's the fraud diamond, where it adds the capability. Not everybody who may be put in this situation, they may have pressure and they can rationalize why they should be, why it's owed to them. And there may be the opportunity, but they may not have the capability to commit the fraud. Okay, so we got that one. Okay, so different pressures motivate individuals, financial vices like gambling, maybe traveling. I love to travel. Work-related pressures, other pressures could be family. It could be the fact that that Louis Vuitton purse really looks cool. And I would love to have the entire luggage set. I'm just making things up now because there's all kinds of different pressures. Okay. 95% of all frauds involve financial or vice-related pressures due to greed, living beyond one's means. There we go. High bills or personal debt, poor credit, personal financial losses, unexpected financial needs, and inadequate income. So the other 5% are just because they think it's fun. And there you go. There's your sociopaths, your psychopaths right there. Financial pressures can arise suddenly or be long-term. All of a sudden, one of your family members gets sick and you have a high deductible health plan and it's costing a lot of money and you don't know how you're going to do it. Or let's say that your insurance isn't going to cover some damage to your roof. I can come up with all kinds of reasons. Persons with long-standing reputations for honesty can commit fraud when they perceive severe financial pressure. The age range of the highest fraud incident is 35 to 44 years old. And you can find the statistics in the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners in their report to the nation. They do an annual report to the nation and they have all these statistics in there. Debt accumulation, positions of trust and respect in their organization. So here we go. Suppose you're the manager of a local credit union and you need to hire a new loan officer. Since the position of loan officer involves oversight of large financial transactions, you want to hire the person who is unlikely to commit fraud. You run background checks on 2 candidates and discover the following. Which candidate, if hired, is least likely to commit fraud against the credit union? Okay. So we got candidate A, they're 58 years old, 1 traffic-related crime, debt-free, no history of gambling or drug-related offenses. 46-year-old, no criminal record, significant personal debt, history of gambling, resulting in 1 declaration of bankruptcy. 28 years old, 1 drug use related offense, moderate personal debt. So of course, if you're looking at this, you're probably going to pick A. I'm not going to pick, when you're going into the banking and when you're dealing with a lot of cash or finances or investments, when you're dealing with that type of position, you're going to want somebody with no red flags. And this person does have this red flag. You know, a lot of people like to gamble, and I'm not going to knock them if they enjoy it, as long as it's within their means. They can go out to the casino and have a good time. Once you're done losing your money, then, you know, you leave it alone. You don't go and get yourself into debt. 28 years old, the drug use. If I knew a person one time, they got hired into a position, and it was way up before I got hired with the same company, and found out there were some reasons what happened, yada, yada, yada. And somebody said something to me. Well, you know, they've done their time for the crime. And I said, I don't care. I said, when you're talking about drugs, you're talking about a person who is dealing with substance abuse, and you never know when that can come back. And not only that person, did they have drug offenses, they also, what comes along with drugs and alcohol addiction or any type of addiction, that's where you start getting into your financial crimes. People who are stealing, why are they stealing? Because they need a fix. It's not because they want to, because they're going to go out and buy a new TV. It's because that criminal is stealing your purse so they can get your credit cards out, get as much money as they possibly can, get as much goods, so they can turn around and they can go buy their drugs. So you just want to stay away from drugs. Okay. So candidate A, just like I said, doesn't mean they couldn't, it just means they're least likely. Financial pressures for management, poor cash position, receivables which are not collectible, loss of customers, obsolete inventory, declining market, violation of restricted loan covenants. So this is some financial pressures. So maybe the manager, they may start cooking the books, and that's going to be your financial statement fraud. Okay. Management financial pressure example. So we've got Kronos Group Incorporated from properly accounting for millions of dollars in revenue. They overstated their quarterly sales. So that's financial statement fraud. So they, you know, it could be that this manager, one, he didn't want to lose his job, because when you see your executives, when they stop performing, they're terminated by the board. It's kind of like coaches in football. As soon as they stop performing, or the owners don't like their performance in the Super Bowl or whatever it may be, they terminate them. And so that could have happened here. So this financial statement fraud, they could also be trying to get their bonuses as well. Stay in business. Okay, vice pressures are gambling, drugs, alcohol, expensive extramarital relationships. Employees embezzle funds to cover a personal gambling debt, thinking they can win back the money. You can never win back the money. Employees and company owners divert funds to cover the cost of drug use for themselves or close family members. They could also do it for alcohol too. Sometimes you got some work-related pressures. I love this. A need to get even. Those are your people, your psychopaths, sociopaths. Poor pay, denial of promotion opportunities. They give an example. Staff accountant and trusted employee became embittered after working 14-hour days for over 6 years with no recognition or compensation. I'd be mad too. I would file a DOL claim. They felt the company owed them and allowed 1.5 million in overcharges from a favored vendor in return for 80,000 in kickbacks. And that's not a whole lot. They went to jail for $80,000. I think the median is 150,000. Other pressures, spouse or family member who insist on unaffordable lifestyle, a challenge to beat the system. Okay, again, you're you're sociopaths. Social pressure to display wealth, or to look like you're materially successful. General dissatisfaction with one's financial situation or lifestyle. Facebook, there's people on Facebook, and when you know them personally and deep down, it's kind of funny, all the stuff they post on there, making it look like they're living this high life, when you know that they owe hundreds of thousands of dollars to the IRS because they haven't filed their taxes in years. and that they can't refinance their home. They can't even move out of their home because the IRS will seize it. So they can't move anywhere. They have to stay put. They can't, they have to stay in the same community, and maybe that community is dying out because that does happen. They can't change anything, and they look great, but they can't take out a whole lot of loans because of their credit is awful. Just some things to think about. Okay. Second fraud, we're looking at opportunity. So here are the 6 major factors: insufficient controls, inability to judge the quality of performance, failure to discipline. There we go. Discipline your fraud perpetrators. Lack of access to information, ignorance, apathy, and incapacity, and lack of an audit trail. So I can go into, we had AEA and we had that, and you can go and look it all up and whatnot. But I wanted to say, this is back in the 2010, somewhere in there, maybe even the early 2000s when that happened. I really do think that the person who committed the crime, committed the fraud, I think his name was Bob Little or something like that. I really do think he was from overseas. I think he got caught embezzling money, and basically they terminated him and just to get rid of him and get him out. And they didn't prosecute him. One thing about AEA is when everything hit the fan, the CUMA, they stepped in and they took conservatorship over AEA, and they went in and they charged him with the crime. And I don't know if they went after him civilly or just with criminal, but they did go after him. So anyhow, with that said, that's what happened. Now, one of the reasons why the fraud happened for a while is because they had an internal auditor. The internal auditor was removed from their duties to go and do something else. The internal auditor did say something to their CEO. He said, who's going to do my job? And they said, don't worry, there's nobody here that would do anything bad. Well, famous last words. Okay. So here we go. 3 main components. Control is your control environment, your accounting system, your procedures and activities. And so you can look at, they say formal definitions for each component available from the accounting profession and the committee of sponsoring organizations. Not going to go there. So how does the management behave? Remember, I talked about that organizational culture. If management takes control seriously, that will trickle down. But if management has I don't care, get it done, do whatever it takes to win attitude, you're going to have the more increased likelihood of fraud. Communicate. Appropriate hire. Make sure you screen your applicants. Whenever I'm involved, and I won't do it again because it just, they don't like it when I get on there, because I go and do investigate the applicants myself, and I'll go look at public access to court information, type it in, put anybody's name in there, and they'll tell you anything that's happened in the court system in reference to state and local. Nothing feds. You can't go look in Arizona's public access to court information and see California information. That doesn't work. It's just Arizona. So go out there and investigate and research those people. Make sure there's somebody you want working for you. I've even gone onto Facebook pages to see if that person is on the up and up. Having a clear organizational structure and having an effective internal audit department. So for each of the scenarios below, describe how the company's control environment was compromised. So company A requires strict documentation of time worked by all hourly employees. The shift managers, also hourly employees, don't document their time and only report estimates. Right there. When confronted by subordinates, the managers claim managerial privilege to excuse their lackadaisical Time reporting. Okay, that's right there. So you've got management not following through. So now, the people underneath them aren't going to really care. Why does it matter what they put in there? Because they're just being willy-nilly and doing whatever they want. And this is a huge, huge lawsuit right now, because theoretically, if these shift managers leave, they could make a claim with the Department of Labor saying that they weren't paid enough time. So you always want to make sure that your people, you document their hours. Okay, so we got rules for reimbursable travel expenses. When somebody asks for clarification, supervisor told the employee just to submit it. Just submit it because the rules change and nobody remembers them anyway. Okay, so there's the lack of internal control of policies and procedures right there. Okay. So all fraud involves 3 steps: theft, concealment, conversion. An effective accounting system creates an audit trail, makes fraud concealment difficult. I worked in retail, and they had a CRM software that they used, and the focus was all about customer retail management. Well, accounting wasn't, that was a last thought. And so in this accounting software, you could post to the control account, accounts payable or accounts receivable or even inventory. You didn't have to go through the subsidiary ledger. And so there's a big problem right there. You could also, anyone had the ability, after, say, a customer came up and they went to the register, went through the whole system, anybody had the ability to go back into that sale and change the information. In fact, we found that there was a cashier, and what they would do is they would go back into the sale, especially if it was a cash sale, and they would apply a coupon for a certain dollar amount and then take the cash out. They were stealing. So you got to have a good accounting system. You got to make sure that you got the audit trail and you have controls in that accounting system. Never, ever allow somebody to post to a control account. Never, ever allow somebody to go in and change information from a cell without supervisory review. So frauds are typically concealed in accounting records. Indicators, transactions lacking support documentation, unreasonable financial statements. You can look at, you guys have all had me, and I always tell you that in accounting, it's all about reading the numbers. When you learn to read those numbers, you can see those financial statements and you look at it and go, something doesn't look right here. So fraud evidence and unintentional accounting errors are often difficult to distinguish. A good accounting system must ensure that recorded transactions are valid, properly authorized, complete, classified, reported in the proper period, properly valued, and summarized correctly. Here's some more. Now, this one can be kind of difficult: segregation of duties. Sometimes you don't have enough money to sit there and hire a bunch of people in accounting. So what you do instead of that segregation of duties is you have somebody review the work and sign off on it, that you say, yeah, this is what, this bank reconciliation is true and correct. Even though the person completing the bank reconciliation is probably also cutting the checks. And so they're reviewing your work and looking over it, so it's less likely to have fraud. Systems of authorizations, independence checks, physical safeguards, documentation, and records. Okay, so they talk about that right there. And so right here, and somebody writing checks and reconciling bank statements. The employee stole over $400,000 by writing fraudulent checks. If the boss would have been looking over that bank statement, they would have seen those checks being written to that accounting person. Okay, systems of authorization, two-factor authorization, passwords, signature cards, approvals, and limits. So we got two business partners had a joint safe deposit box at a local bank to store valuable assets. They dissolved the business and canceled the joint safe deposit box. Later, one of the two partners opened an individual safe deposit box at the same bank. Without proper signature cards, the former partner might be able to access the new safe deposit box. Independent checks. The Office of the Controller of Currency of Bank requires all bank employees to take 5 consecutive days of vacation. You do that because somebody else has to come in and do your job. And when they go in and somebody has to come in behind you, one, you're less likely to commit fraud because you know you'd get caught. And two, if there's any fraud being committed, it's likely to be caught then. While primary staff is vacationing, their work is performed by alternative staff. By changing staff, fraudulent activity by the primary staff can be easily identified. Make sure your employees take their vacations, not because it makes them rest and they come back being a better employee. No, you're doing it so that you can double check their work behind their back. You know, they don't have the ability to cover up any frauds that may be committed. Physical safeguards, vaults, safes, fences, locks and keys, cages. That's kind of cool. Cages. Locked doors. Those type of things. Documents and records. I kept copies of my voided checks. So what I would do is I would write void on it. Some people like to tear off the stupid routing number so that nobody can access it. And, you know, I think that's the stupidest thing ever. It makes it hard to file those checks. But I kept a copy of all my voided checks. There was times that I accidentally left my checks in the printer and I went to print a document. I printed it on the checks. And my checks were all pre-numbered checks. Okay. So don't ever have just a regular, you know, where you just print out the check numbers. You want them pre-numbered. And so I'd have to void all those checks. When the auditor would come in, they'd ask for those checks. Okay, I'm going to have to put this on pause. And I'm going to save. Okay, I hope I can do this. Stop share and oh, I'm still recording. So now you guys got to see all of that. Okay, so basically I got to go stop and then I'm going to come back to this a little bit later.